Brilliance Audio.
The Match by Harlan Coben. Performed by Stephen Weber. At the age of somewhere between 40 and 42, he didn't know exactly how old he was, Wilde finally found his father. Wilde had never met his father, or his mother, or any family member. He didn't know their names, or where he was born, or when, or how he, as a very young child, ended up living alone in the woods of the Ramapo Mountains, fending for himself. Now, more than 3 decades after being rescued as a little boy, abandoned and feral, one headline had put it, a modern-day Mowgli, shouted another. Wilde sat no more than 20 yards from a blood relative and the elusive answers to his mysterious origin. His father's name, he had recently learned, was Daniel Carter. Carter was 61 years old and married to a woman named Sophia. They had 3 grown daughters, Wilde's half-sisters, he assumed, Sherry, Elena, and Rosa. Carter lived in a 4-bedroom ranch on Sundew Avenue in Henderson, Nevada. He worked as a residential general contractor for his own company, D.C. Dreamhouse Construction. 35 years ago, when young Wilde was first discovered living alone in the woods, doctors estimated his age to be between 6 and 8 years old. He had no memory of parents or caregivers or any life other than scrounging around to survive in those mountains alone. That little boy stayed alive by breaking into empty cabins and summer homes, raiding the refrigerators and pantries. Sometimes he slept in empty homes or in tents he'd stolen from garages. Mostly, if the weather was cooperative, young Wilde liked to sleep outside under the stars. He still did. After he was located and rescued from this untamed existence, Child Services placed the little boy with a temporary foster family. With the onslaught of media attention, most speculated that someone would come forward immediately and claim little Tarzan. But days turned into weeks, then months, then years, then decades. 3 decades. No one ever came forward. There were rumors, of course. Some believed that Wilde had been born into a mysterious and secretive local mountain tribe, that the little boy had run off or been handled in a somewhat negligent manner, and so the tribespeople feared admitting he was one of their own. Others theorized that the little boy's memories were faulty, that he couldn't really have survived on his own in the harsh woods for years, that he was too articulate and intelligent to have raised himself with no parents. Something awful had happened to little Wilde, these people surmised. Something so traumatic that the boy's coping mechanism had blocked out all memory of the incident. That wasn't true, Wilde knew. But whatever. His only early memories came in incomprehensible snap-flash visions and dreams. A red banister, a dark house, a portrait of a man with a mustache, and sometimes, when the visions decided to be audible, a woman screaming. Wilde, his foster father had come up with that apropos name, became something of an urban legend. He was the local boogeyman who lived alone in the mountains. If parents in the Mahwah area wanted to make sure that their offspring came home at sunset, if they wanted to discourage them from wandering through those miles of thicket and trees, they'd remind their children that once darkness set in, the boy from the woods would come out of hiding, angry, feral, thirsting for blood. 3 decades had gone by, and still no one, including Wilde, had a clue about his origin. Until now. From his rental car parked across the street, Wilde watched Daniel Carter open the front door and head toward his pickup truck. He zoomed in on his father's face with his iPhone camera and snapped a few photos. Wilde texted 3 of the photos to Hester Crimstein, a renowned New York City attorney and probably the closest thing he had to a mother figure. He wanted Hester's take on whether she thought there was any resemblance between himself and the man who was supposed to be his biological father. 5 seconds after hitting send, Hester called him. Wilde answered and said, "Well?"
"Whoa."
"Whoa, as in he looks like me?" If he looked any more like you, Wilde, I'd think you were using age progression software. So you think it's your father, Wilde?